Welcome to our Wellness Wednesday Health Show. We have a special edition today as it is Overdose Awareness Month. Each year in America, over 90,000 people lose their lives directly from overdose, with over 70,000 of those deaths directly related to opioids. In fact, opioids have become the leading cause of death for people under the age of 50 in this country now. And so I'm excited to be on location with a very special guest, Constable Philip Cash from Precinct 1. Constable Cash, thank you for some time today.
Oh yeah, anytime. This is a good program. What you're doing is why we're here.
Now, you had a front row seat for many years, and you still do, as for over 2 decades, you've been involved on different levels with drugs and narcotics and what's been happening in our community. You want to talk a little about some of your experience over the past couple of decades of what you've seen as far as drugs and the impact that it has in our community?
Sure. I started in narcotics here in 1992 under Sheriff Joe Corley. If you go back that far, we had the crack cocaine epidemic was going on across our country. It started in the late 80s, and it was devastating to our community. We were a lot smaller community then. We've seen the old biker style methamphetamine sort of faded out because you couldn't buy the chemicals. So we've seen a lot of people that switched from methamphetamine to cocaine, either crack or powder cocaine. Cocaine prices were really expensive. Our marketers, our cartels that are involved in that, found a way to purify it into they call it crack cocaine, and where it was affordable, where everybody could get cocaine. You know, a little dose of cocaine was about $20. But the problem with cocaine and in that pure form, it's very, very addictive, psychologically addictive. So we've seen a lot of issues with that.
It changes the brain chemistry.
Very much, yes. They start living for the drug, not living for their families or living for themselves. Experiencing that firsthand, and it was every demographic in our county, rich people, poor people. But once it gets a hold of you, it becomes their whole life. Stealing from their families or their businesses to support that habit. That was my first look at how drugs affected people in a whole community. Over the years, we still have crack cocaine in Montgomery County, but we started seeing dextromethamphetamine coming from California, and eventually came to Texas, where we had our own meth lab problem. Very, very addictive. Dextromethamphetamine is probably the most addictive methamphetamine they've ever made. It's a pure form, the same thing as the crack cocaine. We see it's still a big problem in Montgomery County. We've also had our marijuana, and some prescription pills, but what we've seen over the last few years, in Houston, became the prescription pill. We call them pill mills. Where they overprescribe. You could go in there and say you had a sore neck, and they would give you 120 hydrocodone pills.
Okay, for a sore neck, right?
For a sore neck. It was, when you look at the way these clinics were set up, I became part of the pain clinic task force with DEA and a lot of other agencies, but most of them were just fronts. They had a lot of them didn't even have real medical staff. They were just people that would wear medical outfits, and the only thing they would see you for was pain management, and they overprescribed pills. And what we've seen then, we call it doctor shopping, where people would go to 3 or 4 different doctors for the same issue. Most of these doctors were not like you would see to fix your problem. They were just medicating.
They just became pill mills.
Right. So we've seen a whole lot of people, especially younger people, getting addicted to these very strong pain medications. Something, if you had surgery, your doctor may give you 10 pills, then see them when those run out. They would give you 120, 60 to 120 pills at a time.
Creating the addiction. And, and some of the research, and I'm sure you've seen some of this as well, a lot of it goes back to the manufacturer of those opioids, where they lied on the studies, and they got it approved by the FDA because they said, hey, this is less addictive than what's currently out there. In reality, it was more addictive, and now they're paying billions of dollars in fines, but I don't think they care too much because they made tens of billions, and they can pay a few billion.
Well, in the Houston area, we've seen hydrocodone, Soma, Xanax, and the codeine cough syrup. But in the Midwest, Kentucky, some of those places, it was Oxycontin.
Okay.
Oxys were, heroin to them. They were, shooting. A lot of them would melt them or dissolve them and inject them. Where here, most of our people were just taking the pills. But the DEA and the big agencies, Houston, Harris County, Montgomery County, Fort Bend County, we started attacking the pill mills and going after the doctors and going after the pharmacies that were involved with these pill mills. And we were successful in shutting a lot of them down. You don't see them like you did when you drove down the freeway. You'd see
the big
come
signs.
get your
I
pain
remember that
pills
for
here. But what has happened since then is we've seen heroin for the first time in an epidemic kind of form in Montgomery County. It was real rare in my career. If you found someone with heroin, it was usually a user amount, and they went to north side of Houston, inside the Loop, Cavalcade area. They'd go there once a day and get their dose of heroin. We started seeing it more and more on street arrests by patrolmen, and then fentanyl is another drug that the cartels are bringing into Texas now. But we didn't, Montgomery County wasn't known to be a heroin county. If we had heroin, it was usually going to Memphis and going to Chicago.
And has that, since you guys shut the opioid clinics down, people were still addicted.
Right.
Their supply chain got cut off, so then they started looking for our alternative sources to still get that high. And is that where you found they turned to heroin?
Yes, and it's also cheaper. It's easier to get, and it's cheaper. Finding somebody with a steady supply of prescription pills, it's hard to do, but you can find a guy that'll sell you heroin. And they're little groups, little pods. You have a lot of our people that deal heroin on the street level are also heroin addicts. So they not only get their heroin for them, they get it for their friends. And it's sad. It just, and we're talking about young people here. We're not talking about old people that have been using drugs their whole lives. These people started on prescription pills, got addicted, and now they moved to the harder drugs, the heroin. And
I think back, in elementary school, when you do these activities, it's the first week of school for a lot of the districts up here in Montgomery County. And, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a basketball player, football player, an astronaut, a fireman, right? All these things. Nobody says, hey, when I grow up, I want to be addicted to heroin and ruin all my relationships, live on the street, go to jail. But it's unfortunately a consequence of you start down that slippery slope. And whether it starts with an injury and a pain prescription, or instruction to party, or wherever, before you know it, you're on that path.
The idea behind pain medication is to help you when you broke your arm or you had your major surgery, where it gets that edge off. But what happens is people like the way it makes them feel, and they continue on with that. But a lot of this, like heroin, after you've taken it for a while, you're addicted for life. You have to have, even if you get off heroin, you have to have another medication, usually methadone or something, to bring you to your normal level of being.
Because it changes the chemistry inside your body. So some people don't realize, can't they just stop them? It changes the biochemistry of the body, and
it can actually kill you if you try to. And they call it going cold turkey or withdrawals.
Yeah, if someone stops.
And what we see a lot of too is, say you arrest somebody that's on the street that's taking, I say a lot of hydrocodone because that's a pretty popular one. Say they're taking 4 or 5 or 6 a day. They've got a tolerance. Your body builds up the tolerance to the medication. They go to jail for a week. They get out and they're used to taking 4 or 5. Their body tolerance is back to normal. They take 4 or 5 pills and they die.
And
they were used to taking that every day. So,
the overdoses, right?
Right. That's one of our. That's one of the. Luckily in Montgomery County, we're all forward thinking. We're working with HIDA right now and the Sheriff's Department and the EMS, a lot of different agencies. We've got a new program, it's OD map, where we understand where these are happening and frequencies. And we've had discussions with the Sheriff's Department, narcotics people. We're going to start get programs to educate people when they're in jail about what happens, and get the Narcan out to everybody that we can to help prevent when people do overdose, prevent them from going, to death.
So if someone's watching this and maybe they have a family member, a friend, a coworker, and they see that addiction pattern, what would be your message to them?
Get them help and support. And I've dealt with a lot of addicted people, and once they're addicted, they're drug addicts for life, where they never take another drug. They're just like a person that has overcome alcoholism. You know, it's something that they know if they drink again, they're going to lead right back to where they were. Same way with someone that's addicted to drugs. They have to have support. They have to have support of their family, their friends, outside sources, church groups, some kind of organization that they can reach out to when, hey, and they will relapse. I've seen it happen. I still get calls today from people I dealt with 20 years ago telling me when they relapse and that they're back on track again.
But here, what I love about that part of the story is that they reach out to you like you've maintained a relationship over the course of many years with them, and
Right.
at least
I've got a whole file of letters from people that, you know, in my line, in my profession, I was not going after the users, I was going after the drug dealers. But a lot of the drug dealers were also abusers of drugs. You know, most of your addicts that are just taking that, they usually get stopped, they have a wreck, or they get a DWI by being under the influence, or they get stopped on a traffic violation and they're found with a small user amount. Those go into the system. A lot of times, you know, we have drug courts in Montgomery County. Our judges are really good about trying to help people, and it's very strict. A lot of people will say, I can just go on probation for 6 months and be done, pay a fine, or go through a year of drug court, where it's very strict. So it takes that person wanting to help themselves also. But
what are some of the, and I know there's lots of resources available, what are some of the top ones that maybe come to mind right now of resources for someone that's looking to either break the addiction cycle or help a family member with that?
Well, there's a lot of programs out there, you know, they're faith-based. A lot of the churches, you know, over my years I've spoken to a lot of churches and the communities that have counselors. They actually have professional counselors. There's other groups out there. You know, it depends where you live, I guess. I mean, the more rural you are, the little harder it is to find help. But I know there's a lot of organizations that are starting to come forward to address this, both, you know, the church groups and professional organizations.
And I know for churches, many of them will have either your minister or pastor. If they don't have one there at that church, they're at least connected to other churches or faith-based organizations. You know, we were interviewing a teen and men's challenge. It's a faith-based 12-month addiction recovery, and for them, from their perspective, they were like, "Hey, the center of this is God and Christ," and
yes.
So they're very passionate about that. So
I'm a strong believer in that also. So I've seen it work. So.
I think that's a great place to turn.
Right.
And then there's other community resources I know in the county. I know you gave me a card earlier. Had some different hotlines. And
Right. That's you know, we deal a lot with mental health issues. We are the primary mental health on the law enforcement side for Montgomery County. We respond all over the county for people in crisis, mental health crisis. Sadly, a lot of this crisis is brought on by drug abuse.
Those are hand in hand.
Right. The abuse of methamphetamine, for one, the dextromethamphetamine, the ice, or whatever clear ice, whatever they want to call it on the streets. After a few months of taking that, the consumer is clinically indistinguishable for someone that has schizophrenia, paranoid schizophrenia, and they brought it on themselves, and it's incurable. It's once they have it, they have to medicate.
They've changed their
body
chemistry of the body.
They see and hear things even when they're not on the drugs, the same way a paranoid schizophrenic does. And we see a lot of people with bipolar issues. If you look at them, you know, I've dealt with these people. I've interviewed them. I've interviewed, I'd have to say, in the thousands of people in my career. That was part of my job, interviewing drug people. You would see these underlying medical conditions. But one of the first things I'd ask them in an interview is about their medical status. Are you okay? Are you withdrawn? Or you have, you know, I honestly cared about them because we've had people die in custody that didn't tell anybody that they had ingested drugs or they've had an ongoing drug problem. They don't want anybody to know for whatever reason. You know, you don't get in more trouble because you're a drug addict. You get in trouble for the drug you had in your possession. So, but
sometimes there's whatever embarrassment, shame, or worried about.
And you know, it not only affects the drug addict, it affects their families, their neighbors. You know, we see families that will lose everything they own to help that kid, their grandkid, or their son, or their daughter, or their parents. You know, they got a parent that's addicted to drug. They want to help. And
So what I'm hearing is it doesn't discriminate. It's not an age discrimination. It's not a male, female. It's
No.
drug addiction can affect anybody,
Right.
regardless of age, race, sex, so forth.
And a lot of our younger people, it's peer pressure. You know, just like the first time they drink a beer, you know, with their friends, or smoke a marijuana cigarette, or prescription pills. You know, we seen a few years ago, I did a survey with all our school districts in Montgomery County, the ones that would cooperate, all but one did, about their referrals, problems they were catching at school. And then our juvenile probation department, the head of that, I had a good working relationship with. It used to be alcohol, then marijuana were the top two referrals to juvenile.
And what is it now?
It was Xanax.
Gosh.
So the Xanax pills were, they call it barring or bar hopping, or they call Xanax a bar, and most of them are scored. And they could take a little piece of it and get the effects of alcohol, and their parents couldn't smell the beer on their breath.
Are these teenagers getting them from prescription? Are they illegal or legally purchased?
There's people that, what we've seen recently in the last few years, of course I have to go back to our cartels, manufacturing artificials or knockoff Xanax, and they usually have methamphetamine in them. They're not alloprozolams. That what is the chemical is supposed to help them. So they're actually taking a form of methamphetamine that's in a pill now.
And
Same way with ecstasy.
They don't even realize it.
No,
these teenagers.
It looks just like. Sometimes they're a little rougher looking because they're made in pill presses. You know, they're not at a Johnson & Johnson or somebody that's making. These are made again in garages. So, but they buy pill presses and they'll make artificial. We see a lot of the pain hydrocodone, and I'll go back to that. That's actually fentanyl.
Okay, and then that's more we're seeing on the news. That's
Right,
very deadly.
Yeah, a little of that can kill you quick, but they look like real prescription pills, but they don't have the drug that's in there that's supposed to help you. So we're seeing a big problem with that all over. I mean, it's that's real common now. So ecstasy, MDMA, they look just like an ecstasy pill, which is illegal, but they have methamphetamine instead of MDMA in them. So kids are they're not getting the effect of the MDMA. Well, I say kids, I'm 60 years old, so anybody younger than me is a kid. Okay. The young adults, you know, the college, high school age kids that still experiment with drugs like that, they think they're taking ecstasy and they're actually taking dextromethamphetamine, and they don't get the feel that they want from the ecstasy, so they take another one, then take another one, then we have a methamphetamine overdose. So you know, it's not, you know, these artificial or not counterfeit pills, you never really know what you're getting. But they'll sell them to you. Street dealers will sell them as a legitimate Oxycontin or hydrocodone or Dilaudid or whatever pill they're trying to duplicate. Xanax, you know, the ones that are popular. But
and you know, for those of you watching this, again, if whether you're a youth that's a young adult, whether they're high school age, college age, or like I said, really anybody, just the best thing is just don't get started on that path.
Right.
Because addiction is real, as we've been talking about. It's, you know, again, no one says I want to be addicted, but you know, whether it's a synthetic pill or one that they thought was one thing, it's another. Like, don't even go down that path.
Well, it takes over their lives. It's from the time they wake up, all they think about is where am I going to get my score from, my drug. And when you go to bed, you worry about where am I going to get it tomorrow. And you abandon your families, your children, everything that means anything to normal society.
You're not thinking rationally.
You're chasing a drug, and your whole life, where you should be worried about paying your bills and being a productive member of society. And now it's all about, and then sadly a lot of these addicts become drug dealers to support their habit.
And then it's just,
and that's when they get in more trouble. And our prisons are full of drug dealers, not marijuana people. I mean, if you go to prison for marijuana, you have a lot of marijuana.
Yeah, it wasn't a little bit, it was.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that a lot. You know, quit putting marijuana users, you know, marijuana is a misdemeanor, not a felony case for possession, and that's jail level, it's not prison level.
Okay.
Now, if you're selling marijuana, that's a whole different deal, but the state has broke that into how much quantity it makes. makes it it's what I'm saying. It's rare for a person to go to prison on a marijuana charge, unless he had a trunk load of marijuana or was it part of a conspiracy where they were moving tons of marijuana. Yeah. Most of our people in prison on drugs were either big time dealers or their drugs were associated with the crime they committed. The burglaries, to support their habits.
Yeah,
car burglaries, house burglaries, bank robbers.
It's just
hijackers, everything.
The impact of drugs has this negative ripple effect, like I said, whether it's crime or breaking up families. As we're wrapping up here today, any last words of wisdom, advice, just from your years of experience and being on the front lines of this, that you'd share with those who are listening and watching this today?
If you have a family member, don't ever give up on them. I mean, they may not be able to live in your house. I have a part of our extended family. We had a nephew. His mother would give him a cell phone, prepay it, where she could get in touch with him every day, no matter whether he wanted to be around or not. But she would also give him like food, like McDonald's. Don't give him money because they're gonna spend it on drugs, or he could buy food. He hit rock bottom, and now he's back. He finally seen that I've got to change my life, and it's sad, and I'm just one family. There's families all the way across.
Millions of stories like
that have that, but the family never gave up on them. The whole family. So aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters, everybody. You got to give them support, but they have to sometimes hit rock bottom. Then they have to get into a program.
They have to want the support. But I love that advice. Don't give up. Don't stop loving. Don't stop caring.
Right.
Don't stop reaching out, because when they're ready, at least they know that there's that outstretched hand, and you're there for them.
But you still. It's hard to tell someone that no, we're not going to give you money anymore.
Yeah.
You got to cut them off, and we'll feed you. We'll give you clothes if you want to live in the house. What's sad is a lot of these people steal from their families. Yeah. That's why they can't come in the house anymore. But just never give up on them. It may take 6 months, it may take a year, it may take 5 years. But if we can turn them around and get them back in as a productive member of society, get them off
it's a life
addiction.
Right. It's a life saver.
And if you talk to a lot of these groups, they have counselors that come in that you see that they're married now, they have kids, they have a job, but they still want to volunteer their time to help those like they were 5 and 10 years ago, and that's awesome to see that
they can turn that dark moment into a bright moment for someone else. Wonderful concluding remarks there, Constable Cash.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your time today. I know you're very, very busy. And
I appreciate everything y'all are doing, and the rest of the people in our communities that are interested in helping people. And this is a major problem, and it's picking up in our communities. So we have to attack it every direction we can. So we appreciate everything y'all do too.
Absolutely. You guys make sure you stay connected throughout this month. We have 2 events we want to make sure you're aware of. August 25th, we're doing a chronic pain workshop, alternatives to opioids. Right? So if someone is experiencing pain, what are the options besides getting on hydrocodone or other opioids? We want to show you those different alternative treatments. Also, our big event is going to be August 28th. That's going to be Saturday at 8 a.m. We're going to have an overdose awareness walkathon, where we're going to be walking 4,000 steps to honor and remember the 4,000 Texans that died last year due to overdose. We're going to have multiple organizations, businesses out there who are committed to helping people break the addiction cycle, from addiction recovery centers to support groups and many others. So stay connected, and we'll look forward to seeing y'all soon.